Okie dokie. So, here we go. This is another That's Just My Opinion on Forever His by Shelly Thacker, book one of the Stolen Brides series. Okay, so here we go. This one is a time travel romance novel. I usually don't like these very much, but I figured I'd give this one a shake because, for one, it doesn't take place in England. It is actually a Frenchman this time, so I was like, alright, that's something a little different that's not an Englishman or a Scotsman, so alright, let's shake it up a little bit. So this starts with a prologue of our hero Gaston de la Varenne, or de Varenne, or whatever his name is. He is at war with this other guy, Thrall or something like that. I'm just gonna call him that. The king basically tells them, get over your differences, because Gaston thinks that Thorin, I think is his name, that he pulled some shenanigans that got his brother and his father killed, and he wants vengeance. The king says, nope, we are putting this aside because you were both border lords and I need a strong border, so you're getting over this. You, Gaston, are going to marry his Thorin's ward, this girl named Christiane de Fontaine, who is in this convent in Aragon. You will marry her, and that will be that. And Gaston's like, no, I'm supposed to marry this other gal, this lady Rosalind, who is very wealthy and land is strategically placed, and she's this heiress. So he's not happy about it, but the king puts his foot down, and they both kind of have to begrudgingly go fine, because if either of them does anything to the other, they will forfeit their lands and titles and everything. So your pretty basic threat to get them to play fair, or at least be more sneaky. So in that, we cut to the future. No, this is in like 1299, and we cut to the future, the present day of 1993, where we meet our heroine, Celine Fontaine, at her family's chateau in France. And she's actually an American from Chicago, but she is in France because her family has strong ties to France. She's at her family's chateau for New Year's Eve. We see her at the party basically trying to not have a panic attack. And you start finding out that she was in some kind of accident and that she has something that's killing her, and it's kind of drawn out, I think, a bit too long on what's her problem. And she ends up leaving the party early, and you find out that Celine, she was engaged to I don't remember exactly when you find all this out, but it took too long, in my opinion, for you to find out all the details of her past. She was engaged to this guy who was perfect and everything, she's an upper crust gal, and so was he, and it was all good, but then they were victims of a car theft, an attempted car theft, and she was shot in the scuffle, and he broke off the engagement while she was in the hospital. What a douche. And there was a bullet in her back, and they said they had left one of the bullet fragments in because it was really close to a major artery, so they didn't want to risk getting it out because there was a possibility of nicking that artery, and she bleeds out and dies on the operating table. Well, come to find out, this bullet fragment is now shifting in her body, and it is going to nick this artery. She has to have surgery to remove it, or it's going to kill her. The doctors don't know exactly how long, but they say somewhere between a few months to a year on the absolute long end. So they're like, we need to get you into surgery very quickly. She hasn't told her family any of this, which I'm just like, oh my god, tell your family that you need to have surgery, god. But she's like kind of a doormat and like, oh, I don't want to ruin their holidays. I'm like, I think they'd like to know what you're dealing with right now, because her family, like, she said, like, her family's all a bunch of like Nobel Prize winner doctorates, very smart people, and she's kind of the screw up of the family, and the fact that she's like more artistic, and she like kind of has just been flitting from career to career, like she hasn't really locked into anything that she wants to do. So, anyway, back to the point. She leaves the party early. She goes up and she's staying in the oldest part of her family chateau, which they know from the history that there was this uh, knight, this Lord Gaston, who was one of the original owners of the chateau, and he and his lady love, whose name has been lost to history because medieval people didn't write anything down about women, because obviously women aren't important in that time period, normal sexist historical bullshit. But he apparently loved his lady so much, he carved their initials over every door and every arch in his chateau, G and R. So Gaston married Lady R. That is what she's known as. So Celine goes and she's standing in front of the window watching, because there's a lunar eclipse on New Year's Eve as well, and she's watching this lunar eclipse standing there with her purse, and then all of a sudden this beam of moonlight hits her in the face, and she's just like, what? And she tumbles backwards, and then the next thing she knows, she's waking up in bed with some rando, and she kind of freaks out and is like, who are you? What the hell's going on? Well, guess what? She's fallen 700 years into the past to the year 1300, and she is in bed with Gaston. Well, Gaston sees her and her red hair, which is a Fontaine family trait. He's like, you're the Fontaine girl. And she's like, yeah, because she is a Fontaine. And he's like, you're Christiane. And she's just like, nope, no, not Christiane. I'm Celine. And he's like, you're lying. You know, your uncle or whatever, her dude, is like, sent you here to seduce me because I swore I would not consummate this marriage, which is the other thing that, okay, I'll get into that, sorry. Focus on the synopsis. So he's like, no, but the king's here and we will have the wedding. So they take her downstairs. The whole time she's just going, I'm not Christiane, I'm Celine, I'm not from here, I'm from 700 years in the future. And everyone's just like patting her on the head and like, you definitely bonked your head or something, even though no one can figure out how she got into the castle. And also the fact that she was just wearing some skimpy lingerie when she appeared in Gaston's bed, and no one saw her coming into the castle. No one knows how she got in there. They're like, what? So the king's like, well, you look like her. Yeah, you're getting married even though her uncle, or I'm just going to call her uncle, isn't there yet. So it's just like weird. And they're like, okay, you're getting married. So they have the wedding ceremony, and she's all sad, but like, okay, I'll go through with this just to keep myself alive and try to figure out how to get back home because, oh yeah, I have a bullet in my back that's going to kill me. So after this is when the story grinds to a freaking halt. So first off, Celine is basically put under house arrest by Gaston, that he's like, or he says she's gonna be a servant, and she just, stiff up her lip, okay, I'm gonna do it, and she starts doing all these servant chores, but Gaston's like, well, that didn't break her, okay, well, you're just like restricted to, having a guard on you, but you can do whatever you want. And so she starts going around the castle and just dishing out modern advice, cooking techniques, because she owned a restaurant for a while and she was a chef, and she starts implementing modern tools like whisks and like modern cooking utensils and all this stuff. And I want to know who the hell their blacksmith is, because oh my god, this guy is apparently amazing at figuring out how to make these items that I'm like, how is he making these? Because this is a little further in the book, she has him make her a rudimentary egg beater, and I'm like, that requires gears and precision movement to be anywhere near effective. Who is this blacksmith? Anyway, and so she starts making them a bunch of modern foods, and they all absolutely love it, and they're just like, oh my god, this is amazing. And she keeps just saying it's the custom in Aragon, which I'm like, okay, I can kind of get it if like the servants don't know where Aragon is, but even Gaston, who is a former mercenary, he's been to the Middle East and everything, Aragon is in Spain, in what is modern day Spain. It's a real place. I'm like, dude, you're worldly enough that you should be going like, what? Because during all of this, when she's making all of her revolutionary changes, he leaves for like 4 days to go hunting, and he comes back and he is awful to her every time he's around her, because he's just like, you are a liar and you are, trying to trick me and seduce me. And she's like, no, I'm not, even though she's like, but he's so gorgeous and I so want him. And I'm like, he has been nothing but mean to you. Like, I get it. When when she first crashed into his bed, it was like, oh, this guy is really hot and he makes me all tingly, and okay, I'm kind of down for that. Yeah, one night stand, fine, whatever, take it or leave it, you go, girl. But now she's like, knows who he is and he's been such a dick to her. I'm like, have a little self-respect. Uh, so they are sniping at each other, and she ends up meeting this little girl who's like kind of magical, and she meets this little girl's mom who is a druid and knows all this ancient Celtic druid lore and knows about time travelers, and they figure out that it was because of the lunar eclipse, go figure, that she was able to come back in time, and that to go forward she needs to go back during an eclipse and bring everything that was with her so she can go forward. She can't take anything with her. Okay, fine. So she's like, okay, I've got 3 weeks till the partial lunar eclipse. Okay. And I was like, okay, this sounds good. Like, because this whole time Gaston refuses to believe that she's from the future, even though she's like, I am not Christiane. And also the fact that no one thinks it's weird that, one, when they got married and Christiane is supposed to be from a convent, she didn't know the prayers. And she was a novice nun. I think that should be a bit of a tip off that she's not Christiane. And she doesn't know anything about these times. So it's like, guys. Oh. But Gaston just was like, no, you're a trickster, and I totally want to bang you, but I'm not going to. So she tries to go back during the partial eclipse. Oh, but it doesn't work for some reason. And she's just like, what? And during that night, Gaston sees her being all weird, and he's starting to kind of doubt a little bit. Maybe she's telling the truth, but oh, guess what? Her uncle, well, Christiane's uncle, shows up, and he's all, what have you done with Christiane? And he's just like, well, she's right here. And everyone, like, there's a bunch of nuns who, when they see Celine, they're like, oh, Christiane, you're all right. So not only is Christiane there, Christiane is also, Celine looks identical to Christiane. Apparently, absolutely identical. I was like, really? They couldn't. God, it was just dragging out how long it took for Gaston to find out the truth. Drove me nuts in this. So, the uncle takes, like, I want a moment to speak with her. And I was like, oh, maybe, because Gaston is like, this guy is pure evil. And I was like, is he really though? Yeah, he is mustache twirly levels of evil. And he tells Celine that, you will seduce him and then we're going to kill him in an accident, and blah blah blah. She's just like, oh my god, he is evil. I was like, yeah, no shit. So she goes to Gaston and she tells him that her uncle is trying to plan his murder, and Gaston also figures that the evil uncle is going to try to kill her too, because then guess what? He stands to inherit everything. So Gaston's like, okay, we're getting the hell out of Dodge. We're going to my other castle. And they're like, okay. And so they pack up shop and they leave. And he tells her that it's going to take a month for them to get to his new house. And she's just like, wait, because after the partial eclipse, it was another 3 months till the full eclipse. And she's just like, oh, no, I have to be back in this castle in order to get home. And he's just like, I don't believe you, we're leaving. And they go and they meet his sister-in-law, who is very spunky. I actually really liked Avril. She was a lot of fun. But then, of course, when they're there, Gaston ends up getting shit-faced, and guess what? They sleep together. Marriage consummated. Gaston hates himself in the morning. But also, while they were packing up the other castle, they found Celine's purse, Well, guess what? Now she has all the proof she needs to show Gaston that she is, in fact, from the future. Da da da. He believes her, and he's like, well, shit, I guess we gotta get you back to the castle, but first we're gonna make a pit stop in Paris, get an annulment, and then get you back to the castle so you can go back to the future. I kept hearing Doc Brown in my head a lot throughout this. Uh, and she's like, okay, that makes our time window kind of tight, but possible. Well, guess what? They end up getting ambushed by the evil uncle, and also there's a lot of angsting over he has to marry Lady R, and she isn't Lady R, and I'm like, there's gonna be some bullshit where she ends up being Lady R. Guess what? And so they end up getting caught by the evil uncle, which delays them a little further. Then there's a fight to the death between the evil uncle and Gaston ends up winning. Woohoo, the king says he'll give them their annulment. Whatever. They go back to their castle and have a few days of absolute bliss because they're both saying, we have forever, because she's gonna have to go back to the future and have her surgery. Because now she's actually starting to feel pain in her back. Oh no. But guess what? 2 days before the eclipse, bullet fragment finally hits that artery. She starts bleeding out, very slowly, apparently. And Gaston is freaking out. He goes and gets the Celtic druid woman to try to help figure out how to save to save Celine. And he's freaking out because the wise woman's like, I'd never met any other time travelers outside of Celine. My father had met them and said some of them couldn't get home. And so Gaston gets the brilliant notion to try to find another time traveler, someone from her time. And I'm like, cool. I hope they're a doctor. Well, guess what? It's a doctor. He finds this super skilled surgeon who, after his duel, he got hurt and the guy used wine to cleanse the wounds, and that was something that Celine had done because alcohol, though, it has to be a minor tangent here. It has to be a high proof alcohol to work. If this wine is only like 10%, it probably won't help the wound that much. Like, you need much higher proof to actually clean a wound effectively. Anyway, minor tangent aside, he finds this guy who, of course, was being trained by this other guy who was from the future, came and helped save, and he saves Celine. All hunky-dory. They end up sending the wise woman and her daughter to the future, because Christiane, the real Christiane, sorry I forgot to mention this, she got bounced to the future too. So, yeah. They swap places, more or less, and so they kick the wise woman and her daughter to the future to explain everything about Celine's family, and she and Gaston live happily ever after, I guess. So, getting into the characters with this. One, this falls into one of the things I hate with time travel, is respect the time period you're in. Like, I get it with the feminism angle of like, I'm a strong, independent woman. Yes, but you're in the 1300s right now. If you want to survive, you have to play by their rules. I mean, it gets down to you have to backseat your own personal tastes to make it out of this alive, to do what you have to do to survive, sort of situation that drives me nuts. Also, how everybody is like super accepting of all of Celine's like inventions. I was like, that's not how it works. People just don't grab onto new ideas. Like, for the most part, things have to happen in the right time, in the right place. We've seen this over and over throughout history. Like, it just doesn't work like that. And also, like, she's talking about all the things, like, she's making, and, like, she's using sugar. Like, they talk about her using sugar a lot, and it was two things that led me down rabbit holes with this book. Was one, when was the whisk invented? Because she starts using a whisk, and I was like, when did the whisk actually come into being? Turns out it's in the mid 1800s that the whisk was invented. And I was like, okay, nothing like bringing that about 500 years too early. Not to mention, again, who was this blacksmith? Because apparently he's the greatest blacksmith ever for being able to come up with how to make her stuff. And then she's also using sugar. And I'm like, This is northern France in the 1300s. How readily available was sugar? And from the quick Googling I was able to do, I don't think they would have had the amount that they needed for the cooking she was doing. And she talks about just using like regular sugar. And I was like, I, no, no, mm-mm. No, I don't believe you. Also, getting into the characters now, Celine is a doormat. She is just so overly forgiving towards Gaston, who is an absolute asshole for 2/3 of the book. Oh my god. He is awful until he realizes she's been telling the truth the entire time, and then he does a 180 personality flip and he's a nice guy. And I'm like, you know, I could get him being a dick at first, but you should have had this emotional turnaround a lot sooner because. Also, another pet peeve I have for this one is that Celine is a virgin. A virgin who has never felt a sex drive before until Gaston gets all touchy and she's just like, oh my god, he's the best. And I'm like, it's a trope I've come to absolutely hate. In these is the virgin or someone who's basically had no sex drive until they meet the right person. It's not cool. It's stupid. I hate it. God, I hate that trope. So yeah, Celine's a doormat who, ugh, God, she just wasn't that enjoyable. I liked Avril, his sister, Gaston's sister-in-law, a lot better. She was kind of fun. I really liked her. And then Gaston was just a dick. The villain was just mustache twirly evil. Like, it was so over the top. And also, this book was long. This was 15 hours. I listened to the last 8 at double speed just to get through it. This book could have been like 8 or 9 hours. There is so much in the middle of just Gaston being awful to Christine and Christine just kind of dicking around in this world in the past that I was like, this didn't need to be here. Also, like, I really thought the whole bullet in her back thing was kind of a dumb reason for her to have to go back to the future. It just felt like a contrivance of like, well, she has to go back. And then they sidestepped that by this doctor just happening to be there. Was not a fan. I did not like this book at all. I might try another time travel one, but I was not a fan. I give this one a 1 out of 5. Did not like it. But hey, that's just my opinion. If you disagree with me, that's totally cool. If there's something you'd like to see me take a crack at in the future, leave your comments down below, and I will talk to you guys in a little while.